I was very much lost in the weeds for a long time. It wasn't until right before COVID that things changed for me from a perspective of operationally. That's when my wife, who's now our COO, joined Base. And she came in with that perspective of, you're not looking at culture at all. You're just trying to run through your day. You're just looking at it as, let's just get through this. Let's just move through. And she's like, if you really want to retain talent, you've got to build a true culture around the business.
Hey guys, Damian Stevens, host of MSP Mindset, founder and CEO of Servosity. Today, I'm blessed to be joined by Atul Bhagat, and he shares how he had to learn the hard way to let go. He brought in a COO, they implemented SOPs, and he now has personal time. The craziest part of the story, all before he had 10 employees. So if you want to learn practical ways that you can actually learn to let go, trust others, and buy back your personal time, don't miss out on my conversation with Atul today. Atul, let's go back to the beginning. Tell me why you started Base Solutions.
Yeah, so I had been in law firm IT for, upwards of 10 years, I think, almost at that point. And I had kind of worked internally, and then I worked externally with a consulting firm for about a year. And I looked at kind of how they were operating. And I quickly noticed that the approach was very much like, we're going to do things the same way for every client kind of approach. There wasn't a lot of truly bespoke approach to consulting, if you will, at that time. This was pre-MSP, before they really started to become a thing. But I felt like every firm operated differently. And, obviously based on size, type of law they were doing, all of that stuff. And I was like, there has to be a way to appeal to every client, but do it in a way where you're deliberately looking at what their needs are versus what. Obviously, there is a general product line or certain set substack of things that we use as an MSP. But then what are we doing to differentiate ourselves? And that's the conversations of having, how is your business operating? How do you operate? What do you do? And having those genuine conversations with your clients on a regular basis. And that's kind of what I realized also what drove me from a impact standpoint of, I want to know that I'm making a difference in my clients' lives as much as I'm making a difference in my staff's lives or my staff. It's helping on a different level, if you will. And I think that's kind of where this all kind of started. And it was a vision of that. And to be very transparent, I didn't know I was going to be an MSP when I started this. This is not kind of where I was thinking. I think originally I was like, I'm starting an IT company. I'm going to spin off on my own. I think, truth be told, I actually thought I was going to get into government contracting because that's what everybody was doing. But then I quickly realized my contacts were all private sector law firms. And so it kind of I got drove that way. And it was like, all right, well, this is my comfort zone. I know them. I understand the technology. I understand everything around it. And I had been around lawyers my whole life because my dad was a lawyer. I understood law so well, and I could talk to lawyers and talk to them on a language that they understood, not give them a bunch of technical jargon that they were kind of like, what are you saying? I don't understand. It was more being able to relate to them on that personal level and being able to explain things as to why they need to do what they needed to do from a technology standpoint without overwhelming them with terms that didn't matter to them. And so I think that's kind of where the evolution started. And then we quickly realized we were a managed service provider early on. Basically, when the MSP name came out, we're like, well, we're kind of already doing that. Because I kind of quickly, I think it was like 2013, 2014, I was like, why am I charging per hour on things? Why am I not getting these flat fees? And so I reworked things. And that was even before that whole concept was really strong yet. But it was something that we had already kind of seen like, this is the way the market needs to go. And that's kind of how we started. Yeah.
So one thing I heard about what you said, you started with what you knew. How important is it, do you think, to be able to speak the language like you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's critical to, it's funny when they tell you, what is your vertical? right? And
Mm-hmm.
you hear that all the time, especially when you're starting up. You need
Yep.
to have a vertical. Because if you can't speak to that vertical on their level, you're going to lose them. I mean, we can throw out terms like hacking and all this other stuff and scare people, but for them to truly understand the benefits, you have to be able to speak in relation to what they're doing as a business. I still remember early on, this was before Base, having a conversation with a partner at a partners retreat about the importance of them doing an email migration from one system to the other. And this partner, senior partner, was looking at me with like ghost in the face. And then I stopped and I said, what if I told you I could make you bill faster?
There you go.
Like I could improve your billable rate. And literally the conversation was over. He's like, it's done.
Yeah.
But it's being able to have that logical conversation of what drives lawyers: money, their billable rate, efficiency and billable rate, and knowing to have that conversation and bring it to them from that side of this is all about efficiency. How do we increase your productivity so that way you can honestly generate more revenue? Therefore, this expense doesn't feel like an expense.
Yeah. What are some other ways? Because I don't speak attorney. I don't speak to legal. So like,
I mean,
what
and
are
I
any
think
ways
it's the
that
case
resonate?
in any industry. You know, you look at things. You know, you talk to doctors. What are you talking about? You know, it's you've got to be able to find those common terms as to what drives them. You have to understand that industry and what is going to drive them. What is the biggest thing that a doctor's office is afraid of right now? HIPAA. HIPAA is going to shut them down. So if you flat out say, "What are you doing to protect the client's information?" they're gonna all of a sudden their eyes are gonna open, their ears are gonna perk up, and they're gonna have a logical conversation about it. It's so when you're looking at industries that you're looking to work in, I think it's very important to understand what are their driving factors. What are the things that they're most afraid of? What are the things they're scared to lose? You know, obviously everyone's afraid of losing their business, but what causes that loss? What are the things that can cause their loss, and then where does technology play a role in that? And that's the way to approach it in any industry. And so when you go back and you look at every industry you probably serve today, there's probably some driving factor in technology that could potentially make them lose business. So what are those conversations? And those are the way you have to present it. Because just telling them, hey, you need advanced anti-malware email protection, they're going to look at you like, okay, why?
Yeah.
And you got to be able to have those types of conversations and say, look, this is what you need. Like, I'll give you an example. I had a call with a friend of mine today, who's an MSP somewhere else, and he had mentioned to me that they're being very adamant about DMARC and needing DMARC protection for every client. And they had one client adamantly say they did not want to spend the $100 a month on this. And it was an in-house IT guy who was like, no, no, no. Finally, a couple months later, they get basically an email, a very pissed off email from the CEO whose email had gone to quarantine on a proposal he was bidding for $500,000 that went to quarantine that they lost because it never made it to their email. And it's because they never did their DMARC stuff that they were told to do. And the CEO was like, well, why didn't we do it? And he's like, well, you didn't want to spend the money. But it's all about how you explain it. And now look, and then they signed off on it right away because $500,000, $100 is a big difference. So it's all about how we present something is critical to everything, right? And I think as IT people, we get in the habit of being very technical. We geek speak, if you will, and we do all that. And we've got to be able to take a step back and really be able to speak to our clients on their level and make sure they understand it from their perspective, not from ours. And do it. Yeah.
So we were talking before, you don't believe MSPs are all the same. We're not really competing with one another. Tell me more about that.
So I think there's enough business to go around for those that want it to do it that way. I'll put it this way. There are plenty of smaller, immature MSPs that are still trying to figure their way around. But the ones that are established now, I don't think we are truly competition for each other. There's room in the industry for us to work together, whether it be in the same region, same vertical, all of that. I mean, I have friends who are 30 minutes away who we essentially share clients with, because he'll get an opportunity. He's like, oh, it's not really our wheelhouse. we're going to send it to you, and vice versa. If I get something that I'm like, I'm not the best option for you, but I know who is. And, because there's certain, we're all experts in certain things. And there's certain verticals that we need to be okay with saying we don't need to take that business. I think that's a key thing that lacks sometimes. When you're first starting up, you have that I need everything kind of approach. Like, I want it all. I need all the business I can get. But at some point you get to a certain level where you're like, I don't need this type of client. I'm not serving this client to the best of my ability. They should probably go with someone else. And I remember I had this type of conversation about a year and a half ago with one of our clients. It just didn't make sense for me. The type of work we were doing, how much, the volume and stuff, it just wasn't I couldn't make the numbers make sense. I couldn't make the service. And I felt like I was actually doing a disservice to the client in some ways because of it. And so I had I sat down with the CEO and I said, look, I just don't think I'm the right fit. And you all probably need someone who can cater to all this. And so that's what we did. And we went separate ways, but you have to be willing to have those types of conversations with your clients and not be afraid to also share with other MSPs, because the truth is, we look at it as we've been growing year over year pretty consistently since we started. And when I look at things, I've come up against a competing MSP once, each one. So I'm not overlapping. It's not like I'm taking 10 clients from MSP down the street. I've literally, there's one every other, just a different name every time. So that means there's enough business out there that we're not hitting over each other constantly. So there's not a lot of competition there. In reality, when you peel it back, there's enough businesses out there that need our services, that if we all get together and and this is I think you and I talked about it last time, create that standard of service, that standard of, what we're offering, that is where things need to be focused, less so on what's the competition down the street. It's how do we make sure Joe Schmo down the street is doing the same thing we're doing in some regards. Now, not everything's going to be identical. Then we completely lose our selling angles. But at least from a product standpoint, what we're providing our clients, there should be a standard there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think the industry should evolve to? What do you think that should look like? Everybody has their has a niche. So it's, instead of 200 of us in every city saying we all do managed services, tell me what your thoughts are.
I think we're actually in a fork now more than ever, probably. And I look at the landscape today, we're in that crossroads of, you're going to have these mature MSPs, or even the young ones that are trying to go this route, that are really trying to build a quality service and product around their service offering. And then there are the ones that are just selling, ostensibly are a glorified reseller of product. And where I think it really defines MSPs is when we become that partner to the client. That is the niche. It's not necessarily, yes, there's a niche in each industry in creating that, but you have to become, in my opinion, you have to become a relationship partner with that company that you're a client for. That's your client. So they should be calling you and discussing. You should know what their business strategy is. What is their forecast for the quarter, 6 months, year, 5 years? You should be just as much aware of that as the rest of their C-level team is. Because truth be told, you are basically their CIO. So if you don't know that, then how do you support them in their growth or in their contraction, for that matter? Because they may have a potential contraction. How are you supporting them for that? You have to become that right-hand asset to the client. And they have to know that you're in it. You're invested in their success the same way they are invested in yours. And it has to be a mutual thing there. And the minute you lose that, I think that's where we're failing as MSPs. We're just looking at, honestly, I think some MSPs look at clients as dollars and cents. And they're just saying, there's my X amount per seat, and just check mark, and that's it. But there's so much more to that now. And we have to build, it's more about relationships than ever. because every MSP is going to sell the same thing. Like I said, we're all getting to that point where the service offering is identical. So where's the differentiator? And it's going to be building that relationship and really being able to talk to your clients and have those types of conversations with them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good a really good take on it and where it's going and how the tech is becoming, like you said, the same offering.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously we have tons of vendors, right?
Right.
As well as I do. I mean, there are 20 vendors sell every product. I mean, so we have the same conversation on the vendor side. Like, what differentiates those vendors? It's the same thing. What vendor do I tend to go to? I go to the one that's invested in me, who puts that work and time into me. So why would I expect less from my clients if I want the same thing in return?
Right.
Yeah.
No, I've seen many of MSPs that expect a ton and give very little.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's a short-sighted way to look at it.
Yeah.
So did you come to this over time? Like what gave you this perspective?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, this is 15 years in the making. I mean, 16 years I've been in the business, and, the first 10, I probably didn't necessarily have this complete perspective. I think I was very much in hyper, like, take on everything kind of approach, but you have to get to a certain level as a business to even be able to be comfortable to say no to a client, to a business opportunity, to a client's request, all that stuff. We all have to get to that maturity level of being able to do that. And I'd be first one to admit I was not there. If you would talk to me 10 years ago, I would have said, no way, I'm not saying no. I'm taking everything I can. And I still remember this. I was at an event and I talked to a few MSPs, and someone asked me a question. This was back in 2016. And they said, have you ever been fired by a client? And I said, no. And the response was, you need to be.
Wow.
And I was like, interesting. But in some ways it's true because it's humbling, but it's also, it teaches you a different perspective of letting go, of being able to let go. And then in that same regard, have you ever had to fire a client? And that's also a very liberating experience, but you have to get to a maturity level to be able to do it and say, you don't fit my model anymore. I need to move past this. Because habitually we want to keep everything. If they're paying us, why wouldn't we want to keep them? That's kind of the human nature to it, right? It's paying. Why shouldn't we take them? Why are we getting rid of them? But when you look at it, you peel it back, you look at resource utilization, you start to look at all these types of metrics, you realize that there are a drain on your process, and then everything changes. And so it's having those types of conversations and perspectives to understand that. So it is definitely something that evolves, and it'll probably continue to evolve over the next 10 years past this. Like, it is not you don't wake up the first day and say, this is how I'm going to operate a business. You've got to get to those levels. This is part of operational maturity, if you will.
Speaking of operating a business, tell me about the market you're in and how competitive is it for talent?
Talent is a struggle here. We compete not just against other MSPs for our talent. We're competing against federal government, against big consulting firms, because we have such a large federal practice here in DC. Although inverse now is a little different conversation than even probably a few weeks ago when I talked to you. But in some ways it's really hard. And then during downturns or when people are getting laid off, the market floods. The number of applications I've seen in the last few weeks have been frightening, of people that are honestly overqualified and are applying for very, very basic tech jobs because they need a job. So I think there is that nature. We definitely have a lot of competition, but right now it's a little bit of a different perspective because we're seeing so much because of the, layoffs that are occurring. But in general, it proves to be a challenge. We are in one of the more expensive markets nationwide when we look at it. So the cost of living is one of the highest in the country. So when you have to look at that, you have to create. We realized that we weren't necessarily always going to be able to compete on a salary level.
Right.
I mean, as
it's hard to compete with the federal government.
yeah, federal government and all that. It's like, all right, I'm not going to be able to give you that kind of thing. But then it was like, all right, what are some intangibles we can create? And so
Mm-hmm.
we created we reworked our benefits package. What does that look like? So we kind of reworked those things to kind of make ourselves stand out. And so we took different approaches from that standpoint versus just a dollars and cents game to try and make us more attractive to potential hires.
So let's go into detail there, because obviously the people really matter to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So, one of the biggest
let
changes
us
we
know.
made back, I want to say about 2 years ago, we made the decision to give you an example. We went with unlimited PTO in our office, and
Yeah.
we did that. And it was a lot of people will still look at me and kind of go, are you sure? And we're like, it's worked out. And the reason why we wanted to do that was we wanted people to have control over their schedules and
Mm-hmm.
give them that saying of I think there's a couple of things that come into play when it comes to that. When you hear unlimited PTO, it's, I trust you to make a logical decision for a business, for yourself as well as for the business as to when you take a leave. And
Yeah.
I also don't want to stress people out when they feel like they're sick or something's going on, that they're worried about running out of leave or getting docked in pay. Because,
Mm-hmm.
the truth is a lot of people still live very much in their paychecks. So when you're talking about docking pay, you're affecting their livelihood. And so if they
Mm-hmm.
force themselves to come to work, what does that affect from a business productivity standpoint? If you're sick,
Mm-hmm.
you're not 100%. You're not working at the level you need to. If something personal is going on, you're distracted. So you're affecting your productivity there. There's so many aspects to when people are forcing themselves to be in the office. And when we looked at it from that standpoint, it made sense to at least try this out. And we said, we're going to try it out for a year. Let's see where it goes. And it worked. People were responsive to it. It was very attractive to talent when we were talking to them, and it hasn't burned us from a business standpoint. Like, it's not like I have someone who disappeared for a month and said, I'm going on my 1 month leave. I'll see you in a month. We don't. I mean, we put restrictions around the unlimited leave. We explained to them, hey, look, within reason, you have to give us notice, all that kind of stuff. And we had those conversations, and so far it's worked out great. And I think it is something that is very attractive to people when we talk to them about that. In addition to that, we do work from home once a week. So we're trying to work through that, and we just try and create an environment that's very, how do I say this? We're trying to create an environment that's very family oriented, makes people feel like they're wanted, make sure that they know that they are just as important as the next person. There's no differentiation of the person who started last week to the person who's been here for 3 years. Everyone's voice is heard on a regular basis. And we create a very and open and just warm environment for our staff, if you will, where they all feel like they have a voice. So even like when I'm looking at new products, I'm asking for everyone's buy-in on stuff I am. And it's not like I picked one person and said, hey, I want you to vet this and look at it. I give it to
Right.
everyone. And I say, everyone look at this and tell me your thoughts, because I want everyone to feel like they had a voice in this.
Sure. What kind of difference have you seen that make?
Like I said, I think we've definitely retained people for longer. I think people feel like they have a voice, and they feel they value that. And when we look at the next generation that's coming into the workforce, when we look at Gen Z and their abilities and what they're looking for, these are the type of intangibles they're looking for. They want flexibility. They want to be trusted. They want to know that, they want to just feel safe. I think I heard a speaker at an event a few months ago, and they were saying that's like one of the biggest things is they want to feel safe.
Yeah.
Coming out of this COVID era and all that, that's their language. Like, they want to know that they're taken care of. They're less worried about. Millennials had this whole thing that we were always trying to hit that next stride. Just kept chasing. I don't know if this generation's quite built like that. They're more on that level of, we want to feel safe, we want to feel comfortable, we want to trust our employer, that kind of approach to things. And so I think it's building that level of trust more than anything else, and knowing that our employer is looking out for us the same way we are looking out for them. And I think that's the key thing. And so we've created that and at least we try to. Sometimes you don't always succeed, but that is what we try to do.
You guys started this as a pretty small MSP, I think.
Yeah.
So what is your take on, because I think a lot of people go, oh, that's something I'll get to when I'm, 50 employees or something, really big. So
I mean, we're still not
where do you start?
extremely large from that standpoint. I mean, we're at 8 people. I mean, we're not some crazy large company. I think there's no size restriction to creating culture. You create culture early on. As you grow, it's a lot easier. You can't all of a sudden go from we're not going to worry about culture and what we're giving in the the intangibles, whether it be lunches or snacks in the office and stuff, and just say wake up one day and say, oh, now we're at 30 people, we should be doing all that, because all the 25 people beforehand are going to be like, what just happened? Where was this before? And
That's
they're
right.
I think it's important to create these habits now because it's a lot easier to have it, and it's built in stone. You have that process. Everyone understands. Everyone appreciates it. So it's kind of like one of those things. Like, for instance, we do once a week. Our team buy lunch for our team, regardless if we're in the office or not. Like, if I'm in the office or not, they have a corporate card. They buy lunch. But like the new guys, as soon as they start, that's like the first thing they hear is, oh, by the way, we do lunch every week, and they love it because it's just like another thing like that they get to have, and so. But it's built into the system now. Like, that is something that happens every Friday. They know that they're getting lunch. Like, that's just the way it is. So whether you're 2 people or 10 or 20, that's still going to be the case.
Yeah. I think it's easy to get caught in the day-to-day operations and not be intentional about culture early enough.
Yeah, I mean, we all get lost in it, and I'll be the first one to admit, like, I was very much lost in the weeds for a long time. It wasn't until right before COVID that things changed for me from a perspective of operationally, because that's when my wife, who's now our COO, joined Base, and she came in with that perspective of you're not looking at culture at all. You're just trying to run through your day, if you will. You're just looking at it as let's just get through this. Let's just move through. And she's like, if you really want to retain talent, you've got to build a true culture around the business. And so she played a big part in that whole process, and why she is a COO and chief of client experience is for those 2 reasons, because it was culture, and then it was what is the experience for our client. What does our client experience look like from the day they sign to the ongoing process? What does that experience look like for them? And she was able to come from a perspective of, she used to work for a consulting firm that had an MSP. So she used to bring to me she brought that whole angle of, this is the stuff that used to drive me nuts when I was dealing with an MSP. And these are the things we can't do. And so that's kind of how we adapted where we are. And that's a big part in why we do what we do now.
So you were stuck in the weeds. What was the breakthrough that you needed to get out of that? What was
she
change
was.
your mindset?
More than anything, she was. But
That's awesome.
I attribute that to her, in that she was able to kind of shake me and say, look, you can't keep doing this. You're going to keep growing, and you're going to keep doing this and just adding people piecemeal, not looking at all the factors and how each person plays along with each other, even, right? So to give you an example, something very small that we've been told is very unique in how we do our interviews. We go through an interview process. We phone screen them, we bring them in, we interview them. Our 3rd interview is actually with the staff, not with us. Outside of the office, not even in the office. We send our whole team to coffee with this new person, potential person, and then we say, go have a meeting with them and just talk to them, get to know them. Because it's not just about how they fit with us. It's how are they going to fit together?
Yeah.
We're a small group. We're a small team. And even as we grow bigger, it's still just as important. How does that team dynamic work? And if our current team says, yeah, I don't know if this person's going to fit in with us because of their personality, that's something we have to take into consideration before we go and hire them. And so I think that is a big play in that. It's understanding how these people all work together in unity, because that's the thing we want, is everyone should always be working together to try and, for that common goal of serving our clients. And so, that really, to be honest, was our big epiphany. Was probably 2020 was when we kind of re-looked at things and said, okay, we need to reapproach that. And then we also reapproached our marketing strategies, our growth perspectives. They all kind of flowed all in one at that time, post-COVID, like during the pandemic in a lot of ways, because that was 2020-ish. And that's kind of when everything kind of started to trigger down. And that's kind of where we've been working on since then.
So I want to kind of stay on this topic for a minute, because most people don't have a COO at 8 employees.
Yeah.
So did you just get amazingly lucky? Did you see the need for that? Something else?
No, I mean, obviously she's my wife. So that is a big, there's an advantage there.
Right.
In that I had that, but more so is understanding that I have strengths, she has strengths. It's just a title, but truth be told, those strengths need to be highlighted, and we need to do it that way. I'm much better in the technical side of visionary, looking at things from a technical perspective, but the day-to-day operation stuff is where I would get lost. So I had to hand that off. Now, I was fortunate. I could go to someone who I obviously trusted. I'm married to her. So I could hand her the keys and say, from an operational perspective, it's yours to run.
Yeah.
And we still meet and discuss things and make sure we're both in line with what we're trying to do. But I had to have that trust partner to do that. A lot of MSPs have another partner, and they're able to do that naturally and split off and do those types of roles. I didn't have that initially. It was just me. And so I had to get to that point where I had someone where I could truly trust with all what I knew, or all the information, all the data, if you will, and be able to provide that. And it's the same thing, I think a lot of times we struggle as small MSPs is like, you don't want to overshare with your staff.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it be client value, contract values, all this stuff, there's a natural inclination to kind of, I don't want to share all this information. Who do you share that with? So you have to create some sort of trust partnership somewhere, whether it's internal or external. Right. So let's just say you're not in a position to be kind of have someone like that on staff, but then you need to have a coach or something that you can talk these things through with on a not so regular basis. So I strongly advise, the smaller MSPs, find another MSP C-level person that's out there looking to help, who's willing to help you, at least kind of look at things, look at your numbers even, and say, these numbers don't make sense. You got to rework this. Otherwise you're going to lose your shirt. Like, you've got to be able to have that. And that is something kind of where the Tech Degenerates kind of came out of play. Is we didn't have that starting up, but we want to provide that. Right. And that's kind of what we kind of founded ourselves on, is how do we help MSPs really mature? And that's where that
So I want to talk more about Tech Degenerates, but before we dig in there, what else have you learned about hiring? What's the things you've learned? What are the challenges you see?
Obviously fit is the biggest one. Definitely. The other one that's really tricky, and I think in technical, it's really hard. We fall victim to looking at people's certifications. And we're like, oh yeah, this person looks great on paper. Then they come in and you're like, they don't know a thing. And it's so hard because you don't have days to interview someone. You've got a very small window, and you kind of take them at their word, and you're trusting that they know what they're doing and all this stuff. And I think that is in my opinion, the hardest thing we deal with. Like, we brought on a couple people last year. They just weren't the right fit. They culturally didn't entirely work right. But more so it was the skill level. We assumed they had certain skills they didn't. So it was coming to terms with that, and then retooling our approach when we went and hired again to say, okay, we need to be careful about that so we don't have this mistake again. But it's that is a constant challenge of just really finding people that fit what you're looking for culturally, from a skill level, all of those things. And just because they look good on paper does not mean they're going to fit in your environment, in your organization. And so that is why we have 4 interviews and all this stuff, because we want to make sure that they truly are the right fit for our stuff, for our team.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
So I know this is kind of interwoven. Tell me about when and how Tech Degenerates came to be.
Yeah. So it's a fascinating name, I know.
Right.
So, I want to say this all evolved right coming out of COVID. A number of us would see each other at conferences and such, and we kind of built a friendship around it. And we all started really talking about information sharing, actually. That's kind of where it started. It was like, hey, someone have an SOP about this? Or how is someone doing this? Or does someone know this vendor? Or all this stuff. And so we quickly were like, this is all stuff we wish we knew when we started. We wish we had a resource when we were starting our MSPs. We were all kind of driving blind. We didn't even know what MSPs were. It was just kind of, like I said, it evolved. No one knew what an MSP was until like 2017. And people still don't know the term entirely. It's not like it's a commonly used term, right? And so it was that thing, that epiphany, if you will, of like, no one's really doing this. And then one of the big things was, when we started really talking about establishing a community, per se, it was, how do we do it in a way that we are truly in it for the MSPs and staying agnostic? And that was important to us. We didn't want to be driven by, and there are a lot of great communities out there. I'm the first one to say it, but a lot of them are backed by a specific company or a product. And innately, when that happens, the messaging is a little bit, driven that way as well. And we didn't want to be there. We wanted to know that this was a place that people could go, no matter what product they were using, no matter what solutions they had, and have open conversation about things. And so that's kind of where the evolution of the Tech Degenerates started. And we kind of called ourselves Degenerates jokingly, because we were like, you know what, we want to be the antithesis, if you will, the different approach to MSPs. We're not following that model. We want to be different. And it wasn't degenerate in a negative way. It was more of like, we're just trying to be different. Yeah. We don't want to be that typical IT geek. That's not us. We're different in how we approach things. It's different in how we look at things. We're different in what we want to do to the industry, for the industry. We are generally looking to lift the industry up. We're not looking to have everyone buy our product. This is not what we're trying to sell. We are literally just here to just make things better. And then it was not even just about products and stuff. It was mental health was a big aspect for us. It still is. Like, burnout is such a big problem post COVID in many industries, not just ours. But ours was one of them. Like, people were burned out, and that's kind of where we're known to be the group that wears costumes at conferences. And that's, where did that come from? That was because we just wanted to let loose one night at an event, and there was a theme, and all of a sudden we were all in a costume, and we were just trying to make things fun. Right. And it was just trying to lighten things up, because we're in such a serious business. Yeah. When you really think about it, when you talk to our clients, when do we often talk to our clients? When they're pissed off.
Right.
Right. I'd say at least 75% of the time, we're not talking to them when they're laughing. They are very serious, and they're usually probably upset about something. So that's when we talk to our clients. When do we really get that time to just let loose and just enjoy each other and just have a good time? Conferences are probably really where it all sits. And so we kind of took it to the next level. And we're like, we're just going to throw on some costumes and see what happens. And it became a thing. And now it's like kind of like an expectation. The Tech Degenerates are going to be there. Oh, what costume are they going to wear? It's the level of pressure that we carry now. But it's great, and we love it. And, it's exciting for us that, we're starting to see an impact that we're starting to make as a group. think we're at 600.
Tell me what the group is.
So we're
Describe
built
the
on a
group.
Discord. We're a community built completely on Discord right now. You can check us out on our website, the techdegenerates.com, and join from there. We also have a monthly happy hour that we do virtually. That also started during the pandemic, when all of us were stuck at home and we were like, hey, we just want to get online and talk. And by chance, we were drinking at the same time and we were just having a good time and talking about things. And now it's become a place where people come and they talk about all kinds of things. I mean, they're talking about IT issues, they're talking about personnel issues, like everything in it. Everyone's just kind of having this raw thing. There's no recording, nothing on there, and all of that because people can just be raw and have those open conversations and just say what they need to and get that off their chest and really get some, advice and feedback. And the same thing goes in our Discord. I mean, we have multiple channels set up for different things: mental health, physical health, service outages, you name it. There's a channel for it. And then we do have vendor sponsors. We have community sponsors. They all are on the same level from a community sponsorship level. And they basically have channels dedicated to them for them to discuss things with regard to their products. That's really where it is. Vendors are not allowed to pitch in any other channel that they have, except for that one for them. Otherwise, they're not allowed to. It's in our terms and conditions because we're really trying to just build that common community where people can just be themselves and have that open conversation about everything that they need to.
So what's your vision for the Tech Degenerates?
I mean, we hope to continue to grow and become a voice in the industry. We want to really get to a point where our community can go and become a voice in the industry as a whole, as far as standardization goes, as far as, we're aligned with GTIA, for instance, in their trust mark. We believe in what they're doing. We're sponsoring, not really sponsoring, but we host weekly workshop hours for people that want to get in trust mark and want to be trust mark certified, because we're trying to promote that whole messaging that I told you about standardizing and making sure everyone is following some sort of, I don't call it a certification, but in a way it is, right? It's getting to that level of how do we practice as MSPs, and are we really doing what we say we are doing?
Right.
And I think that is critical. And I think that's what we want to see. We want to be the voice of the community when it comes to that. We also want to be the voice of the vendors and tell vendors what matters to us, what doesn't, and really be able to talk to them and be that voice in between and say, hey, so-and-so, this is what the MSPs need. You need to bring your product in this way. Like, this is how you do it. This is what needs to be done. This is what the MSPs need as a business to really succeed and use your product. So we want to be able to be that open voice for everyone.
So if you join the Discord, do you have to wear a costume?
It's strongly encouraged. But no. There's plenty of room for everyone. Whether some people just aren't into that, and that's okay. We want degenerates of all likes, if you will. It's one of those things we just want people to feel like they can be comfortable who are in their own skin. I think that's more than anything. People should feel comfortable getting to be themselves and being able to ask sometimes the most rudimentary things. You can't be afraid to be like, hey, I'm dealing with this weird issue. Just because you think that it's something that as an MSP, you should know this answer. It's okay to be able to say, hey, I need some help. Someone look at this with me, and be able to do that and have that ability and have that resource to you. I mean, we look at it from a boots on the ground concept, right? As MSPs, post pandemic, if you will, we constantly were dealing with clients going more virtual, being everywhere, all this stuff. And as we grow, you're going to get opportunities in other cities, or clients will expand into other cities. Sometimes you need boots on the ground in another city. Being able to just go on your Discord and say, hey, can I get a resource in Oklahoma? And someone say, yeah, I'll send someone out, no problem. That's the kind of relationship we're looking for, right? And that's kind of what we're trying to build as a community, is being able to count on each other and know that someone's going to look out for you and be able to help you. Or let's say, honestly, I'm an MSP here in DC. I've got this massive project I wasn't expecting. Like I said, I'm not overly large, but maybe I need some additional help.
Yeah.
Can I ping the group and say, hey, look, is someone available? Can someone give me 2 guys maybe for a couple days just to help me get through this project? And I promise you, someone will raise their hand and say, yeah, you know what? I got your back. And that's what we want, right?
Yeah.
Is a community as a whole looking out for each other and really raising the bar. Because if we do that, everyone's going to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of the most common, like, is it all about tech? Is it all about the CEOs? Like, what are the most common questions or topics, or not
Yeah,
a
I
specific
mean,
question, but what
no.
are, what
So,
are
I mean,
people
it
ask
is,
about?
there's definitely a lot of tech talk. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less from a tech related Discord. Cybersecurity is probably the biggest conversation. If I look at all of our channels, the one that probably has the most activity is related to cybersecurity. But there's stuff about people have like constant conversations about music, and they'll talk about music they listen to all the time, or they'll talk about sports, different sports stuff going on and all that. So obviously, because we're all in that industry, tech is the biggest one. Aside from that, I would say the one that we, aside from that, is probably the one that we most commonly see conversation is around health and wellness. It's probably the biggest other popular one that I would say, and that's both the mental health aspect as well as the physical health aspect. I think people like to push each other. I think it's a great thing, as someone who went through a health journey the last couple of years as well, like having that community around you that's pushing you, and like you're posting about, hey, I'm going to go work out today, or I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to go do my first, marathon or whatever. I did not do that. I'm just giving an example. But
Sure.
just having that type of camaraderie out there, I think it just pushes us naturally to kind of want to do more.
Yeah. Tell me what you've learned. Tell me about your journey, whether it's your health journey, your mental health journey. What have you taken out of this?
I think over the last few years, some of the most important things I've learned is I had to build in some space for myself, from a time standpoint. I had to start
Yeah.
building out some personal time, even during the week, because I wasn't giving myself enough of that, and I was constantly just burned out. So building that balance, and that came into play only when I learned to let go from a
Yeah.
business perspective. And I had to be willing to trust my team to handle things. And that was a big thing for me that took a while, but I'm there finally. And I'm very happy being there. I've been there for a while, and being able to say, you know what, I'm going to unplug
Yeah.
for a day, and it's going to be okay. Nothing's going to burn down, and it's being around this group, some of the founders of the Tech Degenerates, I've been able to learn that, and being able to take that and say, this is what you need to succeed. If you're going to grow, you've got to be able to do these things. And then from a mental health standpoint, we've got to be able to get away and just shut it all out and be able to just enjoy our lives. Because if all you're doing is just working, 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 and then parenting, if you're a parent, it's when you take time for yourself. And I turned in that health journey. That's kind of what happened. Was innately I used my workouts and my recovery from those and all of that as my personal time. And even now, that's kind of how I've built my work schedule, is built in that way too, where I'm like, all right, well, I'm working out from this time to this time. I will then get online and do my work. And I'll get online later if I need to, but that's that work-life balance I had to create for myself, because I needed that, because that's what made me calm. And if I didn't have that, then that's where the burnout would start.
Why do you think as MSPs we can't unplug and give ourselves personal time?
Because we're in such a need-based business. We are very much a reactionary business, right? When do it's funny. We had this conversation with our staff when the questions come up about working from home, for instance, and why it's so hard for them to do so. And I have to explain this to them, and that, look, I don't have a problem with working from home. The problem with working from home, though, is working from home for our industry looks very different than working from home for someone else. because a lot of people who are what I call project-based employees, they can, as long as they get their deadlines done, they're fine. They've accomplished what they need to accomplish. When you're a level 1, level 2, even level 3 technician, there is no project. You're responding to tickets that are coming in. And if you're away from your computer for 10 minutes while you go and make lunch or something, and you didn't communicate that with the rest of the team, and everyone's expecting you to be a part of it, and all this stuff happens, it could all just burn down right there and there. And so it's understanding those nuances, that we are in a business where we have to react right away. And because, as MSP owners, we're expected to kind of basically, we're like doctors in all essence, like we're 24/7. And especially when you're early on in the business, CEOs call you all the time. Does not matter what time of day, they're going to call you and say, hey, I need help with this. And it's just that nature of they're so used to just having that availability. And that's the other line you have to start to draw as you get bigger. You have to be willing to tell them, hey, look, I'm not available. If you need something, call the support line and kind of that. And even today, I still have those CEOs that I've had in my client roster for 15 years that call me directly. And my response is, I do pick up the phone when I can, but when I can't, I send a message and saying, hey, I'm not available. I don't know when I'm going to be. If it's urgent, please call the help desk. Otherwise, I will call you when I get a chance. And that's how I approach it. And that's what I say to them. So, yeah.
That's huge. I think the more we realize this is a business where you got to take time for yourself, because there's so much, you feel the need to be there 24/7, which you literally can't be.
No, it's humanly impossible. I think that's where burnout, there's a high burnout rate in MSPs as well. When you really, I'm sure if we peeled it back statistically, which I have not, maybe it's a project I should work on. But there's massive burnout there. And what is the driving factor to it? I'm sure is the availability and just having to constantly do that. And it's that 24/7 life will burn you out quick. And you have to at some point, and don't get me wrong, everyone, and anytime you start your own business, you're going to grind. It's not that you're not going to, but it's that balance of, at some point you do that grinding to a point, and then at some point you've got to be able to say, you know what, now I'm building out time for myself, and I'm going to do
that. For anybody who's listening, do you have any advice on how to start that process?
I think slowly start to give off certain tasks that you have. Find out the ones that are routine for sure. If there are anything that you're doing on a regular basis that you can train someone on and say, hey, can I give this off to someone in my office to kind of do, and slowly just build that out. And you'll notice that all of a sudden you have these hours kind of start to open up in your time, and really start to focus on that. And then the other aspect is really draw that line of, I need you to call. You can't call me. You got to call the help desk. And same thing with email. It's like, don't email me. Email the help desk. Don't email me. And it's how you present it to them. And I think that's the other thing, is messaging. So when I tell a client that, it's more of, I want to ensure you are getting the service you need in the time you need it. And I'm not always available because sometimes I'll be in a meeting or something, and I don't want you to go unattended to. Therefore, I need you to reach out to the help desk. So it doesn't come off as, I'm too busy for you, or I don't want to deal with you. It's, I want to make sure you're getting the best service possible. Right. And I think that's the key.
Yeah. I want to switch gears and ask you, what's the biggest lesson you've learned in all your years in business?
It's a good question. I'd say the biggest lesson I've learned is, it's real easy to look at a business from the outside looking in and say, wow, I could do that. I could do it better and I could make a lot of money.
Sure.
And just think it's going to just happen. It's no big deal. And I think it was an epiphany almost, if you will, over the years. And I've had it through different phases of it. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work. It's all about relationships, and you really got to focus on those. And really, there are tiers to it. You're going to hit different milestones, and then it's going to almost reset. Your whole mindset has to reset every time. As you grow, based on revenue, based on size of staff, you almost reset again. And you say, well, now that we're X, or let's say 3 million and 10 employees, now what are we going to do? Because how do we get to 6?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same way.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get to 6 doing the same thing you did to get to 3. You've got to rework it. And so it's understanding that and saying, all right, now that we're getting to these next levels, what are we going to do to reinvent ourselves? Almost, if you will. Whether it's an internal reinvention or an external one is a different story. But there's a reinvention happening constantly. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is it's never too late to change. And you're going to constantly be changing. Because that's the only way you're going to continue on this pattern of growth. And it's funny, in an industry where change is everything, because technologies are changing constantly and all that, we innately as people don't really like change. Mm-hmm. But it's so important to be open to that change at all times.
Yeah. If there was one thing you could go back and do over or do differently, what would that be?
I think I actually feel like I think about this a lot. There's not a lot I would do entirely differently because I feel like I've learned so much doing it the way I have. I think the one thing I wish I did have was some of the knowledge I have today. I wish I had in 2015. Mm-hmm. I think that's really more than anything is because I feel like we'd be at a different place from a business standpoint had I known some of the things I learn and know now and kind of how to approach things and how I look at things. And for instance, like I said, our biggest change happened about 2020. If I had done that 5 years prior, I feel like we would be in a maturity level that's very different. The importance of SOPs and standardization and procedures and processes, I don't know if I necessarily understood the importance of them until they were already in place. So if I told you, when Sonia joined and she had all these ideas for SOPs and stuff, I'm looking at her like, oh, this is a lot of work. I don't know if this makes sense. But then once I saw them in place and saw the work product that came out of it because they existed, I could value it and understand it more. And so I would say that would probably be my biggest lesson is understanding the importance of a structure of a business, whether it's just you and one other person or you and 10 people. There's an importance to having a certain structure in place, whether on how you do things, how you operate as a business, how you're going to operate with your clients, how you're going to communicate with your clients. All of those things have to be standardized because that's how you continue to grow at a rapid pace and still provide the same level of service to your clients that you did when you were smaller.
What's something, given all the changes going on in the business, in the world, et cetera, what's something you're looking forward to?
When I look at it from our industry, obviously, AI is our biggest buzzword and everything. And I think if I look at something that, I'm looking forward to seeing kind of continue to grow is that whole practice around it and how we service our clients around it because it's still an unknown. How are MSPs going to really support that and what that looks like for us? And so I think from there, I think that's the biggest thing I want to see. And then also the other side of it is I do believe that the market is primed for, we're going to see more outsourcing occur from mid-level. And when I say that's the mid-size, so 500, I'd say 250 to 500 employees, start to look more at MSPs than ever before. We saw it start during the pandemic. We saw it, post pandemic. We saw that kind of trickle down more. I think we're going to see it even more. And I think as MSPs, we are that bridge for a lot of these vendors to get into that market, and they're going to see it more and more, and we're going to see more and more trickle down, and we're going to see more outsourcing happening, whether it be in co-managed or full outsourcing to MSPs entirely, because it makes more sense for a business to not have to worry about that one sliver of their business, saying that, someone else is taking care of it, we're all taking care of it, we're good to go. Especially as regulatory stuff comes into more, as we start to see more industries regulate on how they're handling technology and all of that, it's going to make more sense to say, we're just going to hand it off to someone else versus trying to accomplish this internally. And so I think that's the other side where I think we're going to see a lot of change.
Yeah, interesting. What's your biggest challenge currently?
I mean, I think we see the same challenges everyone else does, which is, growing. Everybody wants to grow. How do you grow? How do you get out there? How do you get your name out there? What are different ways we can, utilize social media platforms, all that stuff to get our name out there as a business, as individuals, all of that, and really just expand our growth, our reach, if you will. And so I think from that perspective, I mean, we have every intention as Base Solutions to continue to grow. So how are we going to do that? I mean, referrals are amazing. Don't get me wrong. I love them. They're the best thing ever. But, what are the other things we're going to do to get more business in the door? And so it's reworking your marketing strategies and all that, and finding different ways to get out there and new creative ways to get exposure, right? And so that's kind of where I would say our biggest challenges, but also where our biggest focus is how do we continue to get the voice out there that Base Solutions exists. This is what we do, and this is why we do it, and this is why we are different than anyone else in that sense.
What's the top book you'd recommend others read?
I'm not a big book reader personally. I'm more of a article type person, but I will say most MSPs I've spoken to that have told me that their biggest difference maker was traction. I'm personally not 100% know all of EOS and all that stuff, but everyone has told me that traction has kind of reinvented how they look at how they wanted to operate. Now, do I think there's a time and place for that operational model? Yes. And you have to be a certain size for it to make sense. But are there aspects of it that you can take and use even as a small organization? Absolutely. And it goes back to kind of what I was telling you earlier about standardization of procedures and operation and all that. And if you really go back and look at the way Traction's written out and what they're saying, that's exactly what they're talking about. There should be a flow, a logical flow for everything you do as a business. And that is critical to everything. So I would say that is the book I would probably tell any business owner today to look at. If they haven't read it or have not at least understood the concepts around it, they should. Yeah.
Super, super good. We use Traction. We use EOS. Really good recommendation.
Yeah.
Atul, for everybody that's would love to reach out to you or connect, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn is definitely the easiest, and I'm also one of those people, shoot me an email. I'm happy to. I'm very much about the community, obviously, as you can tell. Very passionate about helping others, and I'm not afraid to kind of be that person and say, look, I'll sit down with you for an hour and tell you what I think, and take it or leave it. Take my opinion, use parts of it. Doesn't matter. I want to give back as much as I can because I feel like this community is what has helped me grow, both personally, professionally, as a business. Without this community, I would not exist. I don't think we would have survived. And so whatever I can do to give back, I'm always there for. So, yeah.
I love that. Go giver attitude there. Yeah. Make sure to take Atul up on this. Make sure to take a look at the Tech Degenerates as well. And this has been an amazing blessing. Thank you for your time on MSP Mindset.
Awesome. Thank you so much.